a brief rundown of how legislative session works and how they can get involved. But before we dive in, I'd like to give Jonathan a moment to introduce himself.
Sure. Thanks so much, Savannah. Again, I'm Jonathan Weber. I'm the Deputy Director of Florida Conservation Voters. I wear a lot of hats in this organization, of course, but one of my main functions is, of course, to be the main lobbyist for our organization. I head over to the Florida State Capitol, which is just that way, but it's also on this image right there as well. I go to that building throughout session and committee weeks to make sure that the values of conservation voters like you are being transmitted to the people that actually make the decisions. Now, it is really vital that people like you and me and everyone, the people of Florida, actually participate as much as they can, either via email or phone calls, or even coming up here to town if you have the capacity to do so, because I guarantee you, if lawmakers don't hear from you, they are definitely hearing from the corporate lobbyists that are all over the Tallahassee Capitol here. So I am delighted to be here and to talk more about the upcoming legislative session.
All right, awesome. So to begin, it's so important that we make that connection between what's happening in the halls of the Capitol and the health of our communities and the environment. So today, we'll be talking about the Florida State Legislature. This means your state House representative and your state senator. So these are not the same as your U.S. senators that you might be familiar with, such as Marco Rubio or Rick Scott. They represent Florida at the federal level in the U.S. Senate, not in the localized version for our state voice. So everyone has one state representative and one state senator. So John, can you give us a basic overview of the legislative branch?
Sure, I'd love to. So the legislative branch of Florida's government, they make the law, right? They make all the laws. They also have the power of the purse, as they say, which means they make all the decisions basically about our state budget every year. So the legislative branch consists of two main parts. In Florida, we call them the House of Representatives and the State Senate. In the House, there are 120 representatives that represent the entire state, all carved up into different shaped districts to try to have an even representation throughout the state. In the state Senate, there are 40 senators for the entire state. So in order for a bill to become a state law, the majority of senators and representatives must approve it or pass it. Now, in certain instances, for tax increases, things like that, it actually goes to a 2/3 majority. But for general everyday bills, it's just 50% plus one for voting. So if the bill passes and it goes to the governor for his approval, if he signs the law, it becomes law. That's the way it works. He just signs the bill and it becomes law. If he decides to veto it, the bill can still become a law, but only if 2/3 of both the House and Senate vote for it again. This is how our check and balance system of government works here in Florida. No one part really should have more power than the other part.
All right, excellent. Thank you for that, John. And so state lawmaking it can be kind of a confusing process, but it doesn't have to be. So that's our hope here today, to break it down and remind everyone that they can be and should play a part in how Florida protects our land, water, climate, and democracy. So John, can you give us a bit of an update on what lawmakers are doing right now?
Sure. So according to the Florida Constitution, the state legislature only has to meet for 60 days out of every year. And they only really have one job, which is to pass a state budget. Of course, they do a host of other things when they're up here in town. We know that. But those are basically the only two things they're required to do. Mm-hmm. But because Florida is a really big state with lots and lots of people and lots of land and lots of things happening, it's really hard to get all that work done in that cramped 60-day period. So they will have some early weeks, they're called committee weeks, that happen prior to the official start of the legislative session. So this year, this upcoming legislative session begins on January 11th, 2022. That marks the first official day. But there'll be various weeks starting September 20th of 2021, interspersed throughout those months into the winter leading up to January 11th. So a lot of really important business happens during committee weeks. In fact, sometimes bills are basically, mostly decided before the legislative session even begins. So it's really important to be paying attention as much as possible throughout committee weeks and into, of course, the official session.
Right. Okay. So basically, legislative session and state lawmaking is not just 3 months of the year, but a year-round process that begins with committee weeks and ends on the last day of session, which, by the way, is also known as sine die. The lawmaking process is the perfect test for how lawmakers honor the promises that they made during their electoral campaigns. So what can folks at home watching this video be doing right now to help advocate for laws that help not harm the environment?
That's a great question. And, number one, and I should have said this earlier, actually, is that there's another key kind of moment in the legislative year for the members, elected members over there. And they're called delegation meetings. So every single one of Florida's counties has a series of elected officials that represent that county. That's called the county delegation. So, for example, up here in Leon County, we have the Leon delegation, which consists of Representative Allison Tant, Representative Ramon Alexander, Senator Loran Osley, and there's plenty of others going down to the city commission everywhere. So, but the state delegation, they will meet usually in like a town hall format or a question answer kind of format. And that's where voters can actually show up at meetings to explain what are some of the things that they're thinking about and their needs, their desires, laws they want to see passed. They can talk to lawmakers right there in an open forum. The media is usually there watching, and everyone can kind of participate. Sometimes you have to pre-register, but the point is almost every county, depending on how they're handling the pandemic this year, though, so everything's kind of up in the air, but some counties are holding in-person delegation meetings, and it's worth Google searching your county and just type in legislative delegation, so like Lee County Legislative Delegation, and a website. You should be able to find some information on what the schedule is for the 2021 months here. Again, because it's a pandemic, it may be off. But if they are having one, I do encourage you to attend and speak up for Florida's environment. We need that. That's vital, number one. Okay, so the great question you asked was about what can folks be at home be doing right now to advocate? After delegation hearings, for every action, just to be clear, for every action, there is a consequence. And politicians have to earn your vote, hear your voice. Lawmakers are there to work for us. We need to put them to work or we fire them. That's just the way it is. So that's where we're at. Exactly.
Thank you for saying that, John, because sometimes, unfortunately, people believe that their voices don't matter and that the system is so broken that our voices can't be heard. And this couldn't be further from the truth. So that's the purpose of what we're here today to talk about, to say that everyone's voice does matter and there are effective ways that we can all be heard today. So.
Yeah. So, and that can start with knowing exactly who your legislator is. I know it is really hard to keep track of, again, all these elections and everything that's going on in the world. And I mean, we all have plenty of personal space in our brains as well, and that's okay. So it's really important to make sure that you are looking up every now and then to make sure you know who is representing you and your interests and your family at the state capitol. An easy way to do that is to go to the Florida House and Senate websites. For example, the House website is myfloridahouse.gov and flsenate.gov. That's for the Florida Senate. And at the bottom on that page, you'll be able to find a button that says Find Your Representative or something like that. And you can go to right there, you type in your address and in your zip code, and it'll tell you exactly for your location who represents you and your family and your neighborhood in the halls of the Capitol. We'll try to post those links as much as possible in chats or wherever we can do, so it's easy to click and go right there and find out. There are other websites as well, so if you happen to Google search it, you can find out exactly who represents you at the state level for sure.
Awesome, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So let's see, using this tool, I'm able to see that my representative is Representative Allison Tant and my Senator Loran Osley, just like you mentioned before, for the Leon delegation.
Yeah, I have, so it's great. So I have the exact same Senator Loran Osley. She's mine up here in Tallahassee as well. But I have a different representative. I live kind of the south side of town, and Representative Ramon Alexander is my rep. So that's a little bit of Tallahassee's kind of split there.
It is. It's kind of all over the place, but that's awesome. So,
once you know who these folks are and their
yeah.
contact email and their phone number, then your potential for impact really begins. Like, it is really important for Floridians to know that if you have a problem or you see something you don't like, you have an absolute right to go to your legislative delegation, to your legislators, and to demand action or tell them exactly how you feel. Now, do you know that citizens of Florida may actually initiate constitutional amendments or call a constitutional convention via initiative?
Huh. Wow.
Floridians may actually initiate changes in the Constitution called amendments to the Constitution, which are approved by popular vote in midterm or general elections. The threshold is 60%. So also, citizens individually or in a group may suggest legislation to their senators or legislators, who then in turn decide to introduce it, if they like it, as one of the bills that they sponsor. So you can actually look up and see every single bill that your representative or senator has sponsored or co-sponsored every single year that they've been in office. Again, just go to those websites, myfloridahouse.gov or flsenate.gov. Go to find your representative, click on the name, and you'll see sponsored bills for 2022, 2021. You can skip through. Of course, because we're still so early in the process, if you do this right now, it may look like your senator or rep has no bill sponsored yet. That's okay. There's plenty of time. I guarantee you all of those bill slots will be filed by the time session actually starts. But like I said, you can go back in time and see what they did last session or the session before if they were there.
Wow, that's really cool. So folks at home can really be involved in this process more than I realized.
Well, if someone submits a bill proposal, right, well, then what? So here's like a brief process of what happens next, okay? So Representative so-and-so files a bill to protect whatever it might be, right?
Right.
That bill then gets referred, it's called being referred to the committee process. So if you file a bill and it has something to do with, say, healthcare or education or the environment, it will then get put to committees that are relevant. Committees are made up of a subgroup of legislators to then debate, change, edit, vote up or down, yes or no, on the bill to see if it moves on to the next committee stop. Usually bills get about 3 committees. Usually that's about the average. And if a bill makes it through all 3, then it has to go back to the floor of either the House or the Senate for even more talking and debating and amending, but this time with the full chamber. So everyone has a say at that point, not just that subgroup. So sometimes you'll have lawmakers who will see a bill 2-3 times during the process, and sometimes you'll have lawmakers that only see the bill once, which is at the very end there, before the bill hits final passage. So it's really kind of interesting, and there are lots of opportunities for the citizens to engage.
Okay, wow. So during legislative session, then bills can move really quickly, right? Or basically blocked and never move. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, definitely. So during legislative session, bills move fast and they can just be blocked and die. And unfortunately, it really depends on political gameplay here, a lot of it, and I hate saying that. So when there are bad bills that harm our environment, like let's use the MCOR's toll roads from 2019, you may remember those the proposal to build those 3 massive new toll road highways throughout Florida. So that was a leadership priority. The president of the Senate made it very clear that was his bill, and he pushed it through, and it was able to speed through the process very quickly. And then over in the House, it actually only had 1 hearing, only got 1 committee hearing before it was pulled out of the process and plopped down on the House floor for a final vote, basically. So that is always an option here, is that power has power, and that's the way it works. It's the way it's always worked. But in Florida, the real power is inherent in the people, that is enshrined in our Constitution and in the fabric, and we have to make sure that we are exercising and demanding that right always belongs to us during this process, because the political gamesmanship can get out of control sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that is where conservation voters come in, right? I mean, this is the whole thing, is that when Savannah, like when you contact your organizers, or when we send out emails, whatever it might be, I mean, we're asking people to comment and come in. And calls and emails have gotten us over the finish line on some really important items, like Florida Forever funding, or stopping some really bad legislation. Like, I'll never forget There was a moment at the end of session, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, where a representative said, kind of exasperatedly on like a Saturday afternoon, "You can stop with the emails now." So I guarantee you the public feedback process definitely works. And it's vital.
It's working. It's working.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So how would someone submit a comment on a bill?
Great question. So if it's a bill that, say, FCV is working on, or another organization like ours, whatever, sometimes they will set up these like easy forms to allow an easy way to for the computer to figure out exactly who you are, where you're located, and then find your exact state house and state senator, so that when you send an email, it goes to the right people. Your voice as a constituent is definitely weighted more than a voice of a non-constituent. So it's really important to stay connected to your actual elected officials. Legislators always want to hear from their voters. I think they might be less inclined for people who can't even vote for them anyway. So that's why everyone's individual role is so important here, and it only works if we all work together. So look for forms like that. We put them out all the time. If there's another bill that, let's say, you can't find out who's working on it, just call up your legislator. Again, go back to that tool, myfloridahouse.gov, flsenate.gov. Find your exact representative or senator. Call them up on the phone. Just call them. Tell them, hey, I really don't like House Bill 123. Please vote no, or please vote yes. And that's the best way to do it. Email also is a wonderful way to communicate as well. But I'll say the best thing. There's two best things, actually. Number one, in-person meetings. If you can get to Tallahassee, have a face-to-face eye contact meeting, explain your story, tell them why the bill or the policy change will impact you personally, and that is a great way to communicate. Even better, do it now in the summertime, because if you come up here during legislative session, it's like everything's on fire, it's crazy, everyone's running around, there's just no time even to think or breathe or eat or anything. So I do encourage you that if there's an issue you care a lot about, like climate change, clean energy, water quality, manatees, I mean, you name it, now is the time before they get to Tallahassee to have a calm conversation, having a respectful back and forth with some time to breathe, as opposed to the hurry up, I got to go to committee hearing in 2 minutes kind of thing.
Right. So this is pretty much the calm before the storm.
Yes. Well, yes, that's a perfect cliche. Yep. Perfect.
Well, that is so very helpful. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for explaining that to our viewers, and thank you everyone for watching and listening. We're really looking forward to making a big difference for Florida during this legislative session. So stay tuned and sign up to volunteer with us today. Just head over to our website, fcvoters.org, and click the Take Action button and sign up to volunteer. Thanks.
Love it. Thank you.
Bye.